Okay, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Wanted to thank you for joining us again. It's always wonderful to do this. I have found this to be a very enjoyable process. I'm at a stage in my career where I enjoy giving back. I do this because I love working with people. I love UX. I've been doing it for about 20 years, back before it was even called user experience. And today we're going to focus on the interview process and getting hired. And thankfully, we have a couple volunteers that are going to share their experience of transitioning into UX from other fields. And we will get to that shortly. So I want to remind the group of a couple things as we go forward. So UX mentorship is, I do want to set some basic ground rules for participation. Be an ambitious participant, be on time and be ready to go. Respect everyone's personal experience. It's probably different than yours. And I know we've covered these. I want to continue going over these just to make sure we have introductions for new people. If you'd like to ask a question, you can place it in chat. And there will be opportunities to be called on. If you do participate, you agree to help two other people in some way, I leave that up to you. And from time to time, I encourage you to participate by bringing something you've learned to the group. I want to open that up more as an opportunity for you guys to share, not just me being the one to share. My goal out of this group is really to engage your participation as much as possible. A couple updates for those who are new. We have moved from LinkedIn over to Slack. So if you are not in the Slack group, please jump on over there and join in. We only have about 60% that have moved over from LinkedIn to Slack. And I'm going to close that down in a couple weeks. One big update, I am in the process of building a leadership team. And if you would like to participate in leadership, please let me know in Slack. And really, it's going to be just kind of a leadership group that's going to help organize opportunities, design challenges, and more. We do have a design challenge that's going on right now. It starts next Monday, but we've released the spec for it. If you're interested in that, please let me know in Slack. For those who haven't participated yet, I'm going to continue to do this for a little while as well. Just an introduction to myself. I am Jonathan Brink. I am the UX lead at StreamSets. We are a pipeline development company. We're doing about 20 million in sales. We just had our best quarter. I'll share with you, this was a really valuable week for me because I started a year ago at UX or at StreamSets this week, and we just released some new telemetry that allows us to see how our improvements are doing. And over the year, we have increased sales by almost 60%, and we have increased engagement by almost 70%. So it's really fun when you do a job that you can see outcomes that really show up. I began in marketing, so I didn't start in product design. I was more of a strategy guy, but I have always loved being creative, and UX was just a really good fit for me. I've led the design of 7 enterprise platforms. As you can see from the pictures, I am a family man. I love my family. I have a really great Italian family, and I love to have fun. So if you want to participate in this group, I encourage you to bring as much fun as possible. It's always good to laugh. It's always good to have an enjoyable time, and I want to encourage that. Okay, so getting hired. I know this has been a question that a lot of you are going to have. It's probably one of the hardest parts of the journey. Once you're in UX, it's a really enjoyable job most of the time. But getting in is hard, and there's a lot of reasons why. I'm not going to cover too many of those. One that I will cover is UX has done a really great service to the design world by validating it. I came out of marketing, and I can tell you marketing is still considered a lesser than, it's kind of the lowest rung on the totem pole in terms of creative. It's not valued very much. UX is very valued because it's directly related to the customer and it drives a lot of initiatives strategically. That's why it pays in sometimes some cases as much as 200-300% more. So and that's driving a lot of people towards it. So understand, if you're having a hard time getting a job, there is a mass rush to get into UX right now. So all of those teaching and training schools, they're taking advantage of that rush because they understand it does pay well. It's one of the best paying roles in a company. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of a breakdown on the UX hiring process. This is my process in what I use. I thought about trying to give you a general understanding of kind of a common process, but I thought I may do a disservice because there's a lot of different ways to do it, but it generally follows this practice. I don't do anything way out of the ordinary, but I've used this to a pretty good effect. I essentially have 3 stages. The first is finding the candidates. HR helps me a lot in this area. Interviewing candidates, this is really where the whole team is involved. And then the selecting of the candidate. In finding a candidates, we have, the company will announce the job. And from there, as we review, I'm reviewing typically for 4 things. I'm reviewing for competency. I want to see that you can do something in UX. I'm going to review your resume to listen to your history. I'm going to review your case studies. And I would actually say case studies is more important than portfolio now. Case studies shows process, whereas portfolio shows design. And you can get pigeonholed in design, but we'll talk about that in a second. The second stage is really the interview process. Once you've been selected for an interview, I typically follow 3 out of these 4. I don't use design challenge very often, but first is I give a first round, first impression call. It typically will be a virtual call, so I can see the person, how they interact. Second is a team impression where my team will get involved. The third is a design challenge. I only do this on rare occasions, and I'll explain why later. And then the third is the final impression. This is not always true, but it usually is when I have 1 or 2 really good candidates. I'll figure out some way to engage them through lunch or a virtual or something like that. And then 3 is the selection process. So we do usually review for internally for fit. Fit is becoming one of the drivers for most HR practices, and I'll explain that. We will make offers and deal with counter offers, and then we have an onboarding process. So let's jump in. So stage 1 is really about finding the candidates. Companies will typically announce the jobs, and I recommend, from my experience on job sites, my company will typically use LinkedIn 100% of the time, and they will use ZipRecruiter probably about 80% of the time. These, to me, these 2 are what I have found personally to be the most valuable returns on investments in terms of where I'm at looking for work. ZipRecruiter does a really good job of bringing me the job, and so does LinkedIn. We will always advertise it in the company's site. And I've had a lot of people say that they've had good experience with Indeed. I've never used it, but I do know that my company will typically publish it to Indeed. I want to go back. The second is recruiters. I want to encourage you. I have relationships on LinkedIn with probably 75 to 100 recruiters. I typically will friend people in my company, people that I know, recruiters, and people in UX. Those are the 4 categories that I typically will connect with on LinkedIn. If you're not building a relationship with recruiters now, you're already behind. So I want to encourage you, when you get off this meeting or sometime this weekend, start building these relationships now. If you are intent on building UX, here's why. LinkedIn has, I think, 400 million people. Recruiters only have a limited amount of resources. And if the very first place they're going to look for someone for a job is their own connections, and then they'll do a search. So go out and find as many recruiters that target UX as possible and friend them. It's one of the simplest ways to get connected. And then over time, as you share content, they share content, you get to know them. They may even post a job, but when you're connected to them, you will see their stream, and recruiters announce jobs all the time. You want to be in front of that. So please start building your relationships now. Don't build them when you need a job, because you don't have the relationship at that point. If you're in a general assembly group or you're taking some kind of course, start building those relationships now. I also highly recommend, now I live in Silicon Valley, okay? Silicon Valley is a massive meetup group. Like there's hundreds and hundreds of meetup groups where you can actually go and listen to someone speak. There are usually really good recruiters there. They know that's a collector of people and they want to have first introductions, meet people, see their faces. Look for a meetup if you're in a major metropolis. They're probably less so if you're kind of in a suburb or a outside of a major metropolis. And there are courses and groups that meet on LinkedIn, but start seeking out. UX Collective is actually another really good depository. If you go on Medium, start talking and reading people and starting meeting people who are in the UX world. Once we've announced the job, I'm going to start reviewing resumes. It's one of the reasons why I like ZipRecruiter is they make it really easy to review your resume. And I can communicate, although my company uses an HR management process, it's called Bamboo, and we can do everything through there, so communicate. When I'm reviewing those resumes, I'm first reviewing for competency. So the minimum bar is I want to see, unless I'm looking for an intern or a junior, I'm typically looking for competency. I want to see what they've actually done. Do you have some level of experience or are you literally fresh off the boat? Second, I'm going to be looking at the design capabilities, and I would actually change the order of these. I'll get to your portfolio, but your portfolio is typically going to present your case studies. In UX, process is more important than design, okay? And so if you have a really well-developed portfolio of your UI work and your front-end work, or your, not front-end because that denotes coding, but I want to see, do you understand color? Do you understand white space? Do you understand fonts? Do you understand how to elegantly design something visually? Because visual is still a part of UX. It's part of the whole user experience. But I'm also looking at your case study to help understand your thinking process. I want to know that you can successfully navigate a project front to back, okay? It's the hard part about UX is they want you to have all the experience without having the opportunity to have an experience. It's always the cart before the horse problem. But if you're struggling to build your portfolio, go volunteer somewhere. Because if you don't have a case study or some kind of portfolio, I'm moving on. You've got to do the front end work to show me that you're diligent enough to give me something. It can even be something that you did for fun. I don't care if your process is something that doesn't exist, okay? If it exists, it has more weight. But if you're doing things that don't exist, you're creating, like I'm actually for fun working on a social networking app. I will probably add that to my portfolio. And if you have projects like that, you can go create your own portfolio pieces to show, here's how I design, here's my methodology, here's how I execute it in my process and my case study. So if you're not building your case study, if you're not working on something that is going to help you build a case study, you've got to start now. Don't wait for your class to end. Don't wait for your job to come, because if you're scrambling to get all of that material when you're looking for your job, you're going to be behind the curve. Okay. One of the things that I want to share is I cannot tell you how many times I say to myself, why isn't this person UXing their own portfolio and resume? I actually did a test, okay, with a Word-driven black and white resume and my current resume that's up on LinkedIn. It's very well designed. And I got a 90% response better from the second one that was designed. You have to understand the very first thing I'm looking at is, are you showing me your talents from the get-go? I need to see them in your resume, in your portfolio, in your case studies. Show me what you can do. Okay. Now, with that said, one of the things that I'm actually consistently looking for is I'm a believer that I can teach anybody to do UX. I think UX is, some people are going to have better skills to support UX, but I think I can teach you the methodology pretty simply. I've mentored people for almost 10 years now. And if you're ambitious and you like to learn, I can teach you. But you've got to be able to learn to apply it on your own. So there's an intangible that I'm looking for in your resume and in your portfolio is, how do you think? Can you craft good organization? Because largely what UX is an organization process. We're trying to organize and put things in right places so that people can use them easier. That is a way of thinking. And I'm looking, can you show me that in the initial materials that you're actually presenting to me? Okay. The second stage is interviewing candidates. Now, there's a lot of different methodologies for this. If you're working and interviewing with a startup, you're probably going to have a 30-minute impression call and then a team meeting where you're 6 to 8 hours meeting with everybody, and then you're done. If you're meeting with companies like Google can take 3 to 4 months. I was working with a technology company here in Silicon Valley, and I was interviewed 9 times. And the only reason why I did that is because it was a director role, and I ended up not getting the job. It was really frustrating because we kept going back and going back and going back. But the most likely scenario that I see from my friends is it's typically 3 rounds, 3 to 4 rounds in if they're including the design challenge. So in that first call, it's typically a virtual. I rarely meet with a person. I'll meet with 20 people in this first round. If I'm looking for that intangible, and to me, that intangible is, are you a leader? Do you have ambition? And are you going to add tremendous value to my team? I want to find the rock star if I can. That's honestly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that gold nugget that's going to really add value to the company, because I'm a believer that I want to find people that are better than me. I want to find people that I can invest and release and let go and let them do your job really, really well. I don't like to micromanage. I want to find people that I don't have to worry about. So when you're in that first call, you need to put your very, very, very best foot forward. Make a good first impression. I'm asking, are you a good cultural fit? Are you going to mix in well with your team? So if you're an introvert, and I know in the design world, I'm 50% introvert and 50% extrovert, so I have both. Being an introvert on your first interview process is not a good idea. You've got to step out of your comfort zone. You've got to put your best foot forward, because you're spending if you're working in the office, you could be spending 8 to 10 hours a day with people. I know virtual has changed a lot, but realistically, you've got to put your best foot forward of, this is who I am, and this is what I'm capable of bringing to the team. I would say cultural fit is probably the most important thing for the company. Ambition is the most important thing that I look for. I want to know, do you have the drive to go solve problems without me? I don't need you to solve all the problems, but I don't want someone who's going to come to me and say, I don't know how to solve this. Have you tried? No, I haven't. I want people who are going to go try and solve, because I want you to grow as an individual. So ambition to me is the number one quality that I look for. Okay. I want to know that you have drive and your willingness to go out and solve problems without me. And if you need my help, I'm totally available. But that's how really, really good teams work, is when people are actively ambitious towards solving company problems and then seeking help when they can't. That's how you get the most done. I want to know, can I trust you? And this is the question that I'm asking every single person I interview. Can I trust you with a responsibility to solve problems and execute? That's what they're asking. If you don't have the experience, you tell them, I will figure it out. Because that's what they want to know. That's what we want to know as hiring managers. Will you require handholding? I'm not talking about training and onboarding. I'm talking about once you know your role, will you require a lot of handholding, or are you capable of being ambitious and solving the problem yourself or finding ways to solve the problem? Sorry, my dog is barking in the background. Okay, round 2 is team impression. So once we find, typically from this first group of 20 individuals, I will pull 4 to 5 in this second round. Typically what we'll do is we'll bring in 4 to 5 candidates at a time, all at the same day. And from there, they will all rotate on their meeting schedule. So during this, again, I'm doing a competency review in-house. I typically will go through a resume with an individual and say, tell me about your history, explain that, explain your responsibility here. We'll review cultural fit. I want to know in person, how do you interact with the people that are interviewing with? In my company, we actually have an assessment that we fill out that asks, is this person a good cultural fit? Would I want to work with this person? And typically when there's 4 to 5 interviews, you're having 4 to 5 team members. If one person says no, it usually means no. And a lot of companies do that. They'll trust their team to make a generalized assessment on cultural fit. And do they think this is the right person? Because I know I can get myopic if I find someone that I really believe in and I want to invest in. They may not have all the skills. We try and find a well-balanced approach. So my team will sometimes fill in the gaps for me where I can get too overzealous. I will typically, in this interview process from a UX standpoint, I will ask for a portfolio review or to walk through a case study. So when you go in for an interview, be prepared to show your case study. Be prepared to walk through it. And here's what I want to say about case studies. Nobody will read the words on the page if they're smaller than 24 point. Okay. When I review a case study and you present it, you're going to tell me all the dialogue. When I read it, I'm looking for highlights. I'm looking for things that are capturing my attention. I am not going to read. One of the real things that I think I would recommend is in your case study, use brevity. Okay. I'm not going to read it. I'm looking for your flow. I'm looking for your process. I'm looking for the way you think. If you think there's something really valuable, do a call out. Okay. Put a little box with color and white text and tell me why this is important. Those things capture my attention. But if you're giving me pages after pages after pages of text, I'm not going to read it. It's a waste of time. That's the number one thing when I do a portfolio or case study review is I typically tell them, cut out 50% of the text. Nobody's going to read it. Okay. During this impression time, I will usually have lunch with a person because I want to see how they interact with new people. How do they interact in social engagements? I'm looking for people who can be part of a team and can add value to the personality of the team. I do want you to execute, but I also want to have lunch with you. Okay. I want to be able to say that when we're working together, we can work really well in a room and then we can go have lunch and we can be friends. I want to be friends with people. I want to be connected to the people that I'm working with in my team because I'm going to be trusting them for the responsibility of really important tasks. And I like stretching the bounds of my teammates in terms of giving them lots of responsibilities. But I also want to know, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee and check in and see how you're doing, that you can have a conversation, that you can be part of a team, that you can be engaging because we're going to spend a lot of time together. Now I want to talk about the design challenge. Okay. I don't use design challenges. Okay. And here's why. I should say I rarely use them. So let me first talk about when I do use them. A design challenge is where a company gives you a specific idea and says, will you redevelop this? Will you redevelop this idea and let's see what you can do? So they'll give you a dashboard or they'll give you a page or a screen and they'll say, redesign it. Here's all of our assets. Here's all of our CSS information. Let's see what you can do. An in-house whiteboard design challenge, I will do all the time. It's very common during the round 2 that I'll actually give them an idea and say, how would you whiteboard? I completely believe in those design challenges. What I don't believe in is what we call free labor. A lot of companies will use the design challenge to take a real troublesome problem, and during the hiring process, they'll have 20 people all do the design challenge, and it's free labor and they don't pay you. That's one of the reasons why in this design challenge that we're doing in our group, I'm giving you a prize because I want I want there to be something to work towards. Companies will abuse this. Okay. So know that if they're doing the design challenge, yes, you have to do it. Yes, it's probably going to take you 4 to 6 hours of your Saturday. And I hope you get it. But I just don't believe in that process. Okay. That's my preference. But what I would say to you is just be careful that you're not being abused. Okay. Be aware of that companies do use this practice to get free labor. There's a practice in UX creativity called 8x8. It's where you take a sheet of paper and you draw 8 squares on it. And in each one, you're coming up with a different idea. That's the same thing that they're using in the hiring process, and they're taking advantage of it. In rare occasions, we'll have, in fact, my last UXR hire, we had 3 candidates that I thought were outstanding. We will sometimes bring in for a final impression to meet with our chief product officer, who's my boss. I will sometimes have a lunch meeting with them, and I will ask them, why are you the right candidate? Be prepared for this question. When you're asked that by a hiring manager and you stutter and you don't know, it means you don't know. Be prepared to answer, why am I the best hire? You've got to think about that question before going into the process. And it may be because I'm going to bring the most ambition to your group. I'm going to solve the problems and I'm going to learn, and you're not going to have to worry about me. Find the reason why you are the right candidate. I can tell you, I've hired someone specifically because they answer this question really well. And that makes a difference. Okay. I want to give you a couple interview suggestions during stage 2. Bring your best self. First impressions matter. I can tell you, I've already done the virtual, so I've got my 30-minute, but in that, it's really that first impression in person that really matters to me. And I would say I probably make 90% of my decision in that first 10 minutes. Okay. I've already reviewed your case studies. I've already had my 30-minute virtual. I'm looking for that connection. So bring your best self. You've got to shine. That's when you got to do it. Have an ambition. I know we've talked about this, but know what you want to do and go after it. There are a lot of people that ask me to review their resume and their portfolio. And one of the most common errors I make, and from a hiring manager, I want to talk about this. If you're stuck in that space of transition, such that you're coming out of let's say you're coming out of marketing. I know a lot of people switch from marketing and graphic design and they go into UX, and in their portfolio or in their headline, they say, I am marketing and UX genius. Okay. Or a guru. That's fine, but don't mix them. Let me know, are you going after marketing or are you going after UX? This is probably, you got to know what you want to do and go after it. You can have, and here's the untold truth. You can have 6 different resumes. Okay. Have one tailored for the keywords for the job you're trying to get. So if you're still trying to get into UX and you know you could potentially get a job in marketing in the interim, have a marketing related resume that speaks just to marketing, and have one for UX that's geared mostly towards UX. Don't mix them, because the number one thing I hear from recruiters and hiring managers is they don't know what they want. When you present, I'm in marketing and I'm in UX, it may be true that you're capable of doing both, but the impression you will give is that you don't know what you want. You're not sure, and nobody wants to hire someone who doesn't know that they want to be in UX. It's hard, but the simplest way to do is to segment your resumes and send out different resumes for different jobs. If you're in the bottom and you're just starting, it's going to be tough because you're trying to find that first opportunity. Just keep your resumes separated. Dress professionally. I can't, and I'm not talking about a suit. Suits are not required, at least in Silicon Valley anymore. We're pretty much business casual, even for interviews, but I wear a coat. Okay. I wear a sport coat and I wear jeans with a really nice button down shirt and a sport coat and really nice shoes. So it's just at that highest end of business casual, because again, I'm trying to make a first impression that I'm a professional. And I can tell you, I don't have enough fingers and toes to how many times I've had people walk in. I'm like, seriously? Like, you really are wearing that? So just be aware, how you dress does matter because it presents an image. Research and prepare. I want to highly recommend that if you get an interview or you get that first virtual interview, know the company you're interviewing with. Spend enough time to read their website, research what products and services they have. And I will tell you, the thing that stands out to me most in those first virtual interviews are the people who say, oh, I really like your streaming product for pipelines. That goes a long way. It tells me that you are ambitious. This is one of the best ways you can show me that you're ambitious, to go and be proactive. There are a lot of people who will actually take it an even farther step, and they will actually try and come up with a mock-up beforehand. I don't always recommend that, but it doesn't hurt. I would save it for the second interview. And I've had people say that it really works well. You pull it out when you need it, but at least do the research to understand what company you're hiring for. Because if you're going in and I ask you a question about our product and you don't know, I will always ask you about my product. Tell me what you know about StreamSets. Tell me what you know about our product and what we do. And I'm asking because I want to see, have you done your due diligence? Now, here's the tough part. If you're early in your career, it's really hard not to compromise. Okay. You're just trying to get your foot in the door. I don't want to ever put that down. It's a tough road, especially in COVID right now. But long term, as you begin to develop your career, it's most important to find the right fit, because you can be really good at your job. And if you're not in the right team, you're not going to be happy. Okay. It is a miserable experience making a lot of money with people you don't like working for. So I want to encourage you, as much as possible, don't compromise. If you go in and you see red flags all over the place with a hiring manager that's just gruff, don't let people abuse you. Okay. It's not worth the ulcer or the upset stomach or the acid reflux that comes from it by living in a really bad job. Now, I know in some ways you don't have choices. Sometimes you have to take the bad job. I completely understand that. I don't want to denigrate that at all. That's a reality for some people. I've been in that situation. Okay. But look for your next job right away. Don't compromise. Always be looking for what's better and next, because I can tell you right now, I'm in one of the best situations I've ever been in. And it's really enjoyable waking up knowing that when I get on a Zoom meeting, I love the people that I work with. It's a really enjoyable experience. The last thing is ask good questions. Ask the hiring manager how the company sees UX as part of strategy. Now, the reality is that UX specifically is a burgeoning field. It's considered a soft element. It's not hard like finance and sales, where you have hard numbers that are always working with a customer and trying to come up with good user experiences that are tangible is now being validated by research. So it's becoming harder, but it's still considered ooey gooey. So if your company doesn't value UX as part of their strategy, not their tactics, if they don't understand that a good user experience is central to the success of our company, you're ultimately probably going to be unhappy in your role, because it is really hard to work for a company that doesn't value UX, especially when you're getting paid for it. In fact, my predecessor, I was actually brought on to my company specifically because our chief product officer came on and said, UX has to be central. It has to be the first move we make. So she hired me. The guy before me what actually quit because the company didn't embrace UX at all. It's a tough challenge. So again, if you have the luxury, and I know it's a luxury, of trying to find a company that values UX, it's worth it. If you don't, I understand, but I would recommend try and figure out from the hiring manager how the company sees UX as part of the strategy. Second, ask questions about the roadmap and where the product is going. This is less to do about competency or anything. It has more to do with your ambition. You want to actually ask really good questions around engagement. And the roadmap is one of the easiest ways for your hiring manager or product manager or someone who's interviewing you to share what's going on in the company. It will give you a bigger picture and it will look smart. Okay, because it's just a good question. Tell me about your roadmap. Tell me about where your product is going. You want to see where the trajectory is. You can also ask about metrics. What kind of KPIs? So KPI is a key performance indicator. It's like, what metric are you being measured for your UX? Are you using an exit score? Are you doing any kind of measuring? How's your UX research? Do you believe in it? Things like that. So come in asking good questions. The third process is selecting a candidate. So I typically will select 3 candidates, sometimes 4 or 5. In this last round, I had a group of 20. We whittled it down to 6. And then I had the final 3. And then my chief product officer and I discussed it. I will review with my internal team. We will talk about, and most of this is on in a digital format where we're putting it all together in one note-taking session around concerns and questions and positives. We will have a yay or nay vote. Typically, it's 4 to 5 people are a part of the original team, and anybody who interviews gets a vote. And it's rare that I will override that vote. Okay. If my team says no, I will typically go to them and ask them why, if I believe in the person. But then I'm asking, do I want to fight against the will of my team? If my team says no, they usually have a really good reason. Okay. And the reason that I found for myself is usually I tend to be ambitious for the people that I'm wanting to get, and I believe in them for them, and I know how I can shape them. But sometimes there's limitations on that, and my team helps center me a little bit. But rarely have I overturned that vote. So usually hiring decisions are made in teams. This is true across most startups and enterprises. The decision isn't just in one person. They're taking a coded team approach to it. In terms of making an offer, I will typically submit an offer verbally first, and then through a written letter, through an email. HR will typically manage the letter. And for first timers, I want to recommend to get experience in the right company, even if it's in lower pay. So if you have a really high paying company in a real high paying role in a bad job or a low paying company in a really good team, I would take the lower pay every day, because the life experience of a bad company is it's just awful. It's a grind. You wake up and you realize, I don't want to go to work today, but I have to. You don't want that experience. If you're, and I know the learning curve is hard in the beginning and getting your foot in the door. Sometimes you just have to take anything, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, if you have the choice, choose the one where you have the best fit with a company. That would be my recommendation from experience. Second is, don't sell yourself short. During the offer process, there's an old trick that actually really does work. When you receive an offer, never accept it, ever. Ask for time to think. And if it's a verbal offer, such that, say I'm offering you a certain sum of money, there's an old trick that is on the internet that's been around forever, is if you wait 60 seconds, you will likely get a raise, is absolutely true. It's happened to me twice. Okay. The person made a verbal offer. I waited and I literally counted to 45 seconds. And within 30 seconds, I got a raise. Okay. Don't sell yourself short. Follow tricks that work. That's one simple trick that works. If you are in multiple offer situations, it's okay to ask for an extension of 48 hours. Okay. Companies, when they want you, will let you wait. Okay. So if you feel like you have a job offer, you got a job offer today and you're waiting for a job offer tomorrow, just ask for the time. If they don't, companies will typically give you 24 hours at least. So don't hesitate to ask for it if you need it. Once you get the offer and you're employed, we will carry people through an onboarding process at my company. Most companies that are enterprise level will have some kind of onboarding process. It's usually the smaller companies that don't. When you're going through that onboarding process, again, you're making a first impression. Be proactive in meeting people. Okay. People like people who introduce themselves. It's proactive. It says, I'm here. You're creating an experience. Again, your job is UX. So think about your experience. Think about how you present yourself. UX your own interactions with other people. Find ways to be a good teammate. Find ways to engage. There's an old book by Norman Vincent Peale, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The guy was the first UXer, I believe it. He basically said the best way to make conversation is to ask questions. So as you are onboarding, be a good teammate, and just ask really great questions. If you see somebody who's brand new, that hey, my name is Jonathan. Nice to meet you. I'm brand new on staff. Tell me about yourself. How long have you been working here? It's a very simple way of being proactive. And here's why. UX is a pivotal role, and you need to be strategic about the discussions you have. You need to earn the right to be heard. And one of the best ways to be heard is to be friendly. Okay? When you're quiet and you're sheepish and you're not saying anything, people don't know what to assume. But when you're friendly, they will typically be friendly back. You've got to earn the right to be heard in a company. And the best way to do that is is just simply to be friendly. Okay. I want to actually turn it over here. We have a couple of people that are going to be sharing their experiences of transitioning into UX. So Jackie, why don't you introduce yourself and then share your story?
Hi guys, my name is Jackie. Thanks for having me. So before I fell into UX, I was dancing professionally. I did cruise ships for a little while, so I was traveling around the world. And then I also did some local shows, theater productions in the Austin, Texas area. And I needed a switch, needed something a little more stable. Starving artist life wasn't treating me well. And my brother, who was a developer, had mentioned UX, and I had no idea what it was. So I did a bunch of Googling and was just trying to figure out if it was even for me. And about 6 months after doing some hardcore research, I decided to go to General Assembly. So I did their full-time immersive, the 10-week course, and it was very intense, but also really awesome because I got just kind of thrown into the deep end a little bit, which is kind of how I like to do things anyway. And after I graduated in January, the pandemic happened. So I pretty much was in job search mode during all the craziness, which was hard. It was really, really hard, as y'all know. So I did the job searching. I tried every approach you can think of. I've done literally every job board, you name it. And I think I found an internship, a very small startup based out in California. I believe I found it through Angel's List. I'm not even really that positive where I found it, to be honest, but had a conversation based off of just the mission of the company. I was really jamming on it. And so I just kind of did a little introductory letter. I was just like, hey, I think this is awesome that you're doing this. And I'm really excited to see how it turns out, kind of regardless if I was part of it or not. And I think that really helped open the door for that conversation to kind of flourish more. And we got to talking on the phone and kind of doing those interviews that he was talking about. And let's see here. After that, I did the internship. I will be very transparent. It was an unpaid internship. I am in a position where I have some support around me. So I kind of just knew it was going to be 3 months of hard work and really learning as much as I could. And it worked. It really did. It was a really smart move for me to do because I gained a really great case study out of it. I gained that cross collaboration within teams. There's just a lot more. It was a more enriching environment for me to be in to learn more. And so after that, was able to put it on my portfolio, started the application process all over again, and recently landed a job this last month. And I can attribute 50% to that case study. It was a really unique experience, and I got to talk about the process and everything I learned from it, my growth from school to this internship. And they were really impressed by it. I was kind of shocked how impressed they were. I was like, oh yeah, I did learn a lot of cool things. So I think having that learner's mindset is crucial. I cannot say that enough. If you are willing to learn something, people will just be attracted to that. So it's okay if you don't know it all. I don't know it all. I'm figuring it out every day. Yes, I will also mention having a support system is huge. So I'm super happy to be a part of this community. And if anybody ever wants to talk or just like vent about the process, even, there needs to be a space for that too. So I'm happy to chat with you and if you want to pick my brain or whatnot. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jackie. Let me ask you this. What's the number one thing you learned by doing the unpaid internship?
I think, oh man, it was a lot. I think, you know what, actually, if I could kind of, that one thing, it would be the ability to work quicker and more effectively. Because it was a startup, our sprints were a week long and the expectations were just pretty high. Wow. I'm a person that like always meets the expectation because I get really down on myself if I don't get the thing. And I just kind of willed myself to do it somehow, even if that meant working really, really late. Like I did the grunt work, I really did. And I knew it was a short period. I was like, I can do this for a short period. So yeah, I think it was that setting that pace of just working really quick, learning how to write emails to people, trying to get them to talk to you, interviewing people quickly, how do I get an interview in 20 minutes during a pandemic? You just like figuring out how to be really agile and just like, okay, that didn't work, pivot, try this. Okay, that didn't work, try this. Like just being able to think quickly like that was really helpful.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jackie. I really appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
I want to jump to Miranda. Miranda, let's hear your story. Did we lose Miranda? I don't know if she jumped off, unfortunately.
You're muted right now.
Hi, I started talking and, but yeah, can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. So hi, my name is Miranda. Thanks for having me. I'm Canadian. I'm from Ottawa, the capital, and I've worked in UX since mid 2018, so about 2 years now. And I transitioned into UX kind of early into my career. So I have a Bachelor of Commerce, which is a business degree with a specialization in marketing. And before that, I was actually a major in accounting until 2 weeks before my fourth year started. And then I switched into marketing and graduated with that. And how I discovered UX was I went to this entrepreneurship conference in the end of my fourth year, and they had this room where you could meet experienced entrepreneurs to validate your business ideas. So my idea never happened, but I met a product designer who introduced me to the term user experience for the first time. He told me about the UX of product design, and he talked about how when you buy a new phone, you know, the section of the box when you first open it and all the papers that you see when you first get that phone is all planned. And that really intrigued me, and I thought a lot about it. So I started doing a lot of research, and I looked into UX online, and I found this certificate that was at a college in my city. So I signed up to do that program while I was working in my first job after university in marketing. It wasn't a boot camp. It was 4 online courses, but there was a lot of reading, a lot of theory, a lot of assignments. And I found it super fascinating. It wasn't, you know, designing products, but it was like web. So I thought that was really cool. And also, while at my marketing job, we went through a website redesign of our parent company site, as well as refreshed our own site. So I got to apply some of what I learned in the course right away in my job. And then I guess this doesn't happen to everyone, but I was approached one day on LinkedIn by the director of digital experience at an ad agency in my city. And then, you know, I never thought that I would actually get to work in UX. I thought I would be working in marketing forever. But I had UX in my portfolio. So after 2 months of really, really hard interviews, I followed up a lot. I got the job. And I think this kind of ties into what Jonathan was saying before. But early on in your career, so what got me the job was the fact that I had a marketing background. And at the same time I was interviewing, I was working towards another certificate. It was kind of like a boot camp, and it was in digital marketing. And that made me Google Analytics and Google Ads certified, and also knowledgeable in SEO and other aspects of digital marketing. And I find that when you work in agencies, they like that you know a little bit of everything, since agency work can fluctuate a lot. And it's good that you can do other things if the UX work is low. So I was a UX designer there. I worked with UI designers, UX researchers, developers, strategists, project managers, and then other traditional agency roles like graphic designers, creative directors. Then I got laid off. The company filed for bankruptcy a few months later. And then I was able to find another UX job with another agency in town. That agency also offered marketing experience, so they also liked me for that. But then into the pandemic, I got laid off like 3 days into lockdown. And then I started in July at the place I am at now. My role is UX researcher and designer. So what I learned from working in agencies is that your work really depends on what the client is willing to pay for, and that UX research is usually pretty minimal, which is kind of sad.
Yes.
Yeah. And also another thing is a lot of companies will have in the job title like UI/UX, but if you want like more of a strategic role, you got to really filter those out. Look for companies that don't call it UI/UX, or they'll kind of expect you to also know visual design. But if that's what you want, then great. If not, then just watch out for that. Yeah.
Miranda, thank you very much. I know we've got a couple minutes. Does anybody else just take 1 minute about transitioning into UX? Anybody have anything? Their experience?
I could share if you want.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I was a graphic designer since 2006. And I was going through a lot of jobs. I had quite a few jobs doing graphic design, but I was kind of stuck because I wasn't growing. I wasn't going anywhere. And I'm like, okay, I need to grow my knowledge. So I took web design in 2014 till 2016. And I realized I really don't like web at all. In 2017, I did a part-time UX course at BitMaker, but I really didn't understand much about the process because it was like 3 hours a week. And then earlier this year, I did a UX design at Red Academy. But the crazy thing was, after a week of the school, they said they were gonna close down the school after the end of the semester. So we're like, okay, this is crazy. We had 2 profs at the beginning of the semester. After the first month, one of the profs left. So we're like, okay, so we're not getting the learning experience that we fully need. But the thing that appealed to me for the school was we had real life clients. So we had 3 real life clients. We did 2 of them. And at the end, 2 weeks before the school closed, the ministry told us to come on Zoom. So the school closed 2 weeks prior, 2 weeks prior to basically the semester ending. So they gave us 2 options. Either we could get the money back of the 2 weeks, or we could continue on to a different school. I didn't pay full. So I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to leave it. But we had already been assigned our last group with our last client. So I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to gather my last group and see if the client is willing to work with us separately. And she did, and we were able to do it remotely and without the school's help. And it took us 8 weeks, but we were able to accomplish a pretty good UX design for that last client.
Good. All right. Any questions? I know we're running near the end of the time. We've got time for about 1 or 2 questions. Anybody have thoughts on the hiring process? Don't be shy.
I do have a question.
I'm gonna go ahead.
Okay. I personally am an introvert. It's quite hard for me for interviews, for example, to really show my personality or to be comfortable off the bat in a space. So I'm wondering if you guys have any tips, because you were saying before that you should still try to show out and show your full personality there. Like, how do you do that? I would wonder.
Yeah, you know what, Amma, am I getting that right? Is it Amma?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, so this is a tough question because people are naturally introverted, and creatives by nature are typically introverted. I would say on average, 80% of my team is primarily introvert. I've had to learn to become an extrovert because I'm in leadership. And I think the more you practice, the more you will be comfortable. It's not the whole of who you are, but it's appropriate for the circumstance. So if you go into a business situation that requires you to have that skill, you're preparing yourself for that moment by practicing it. You don't have to do it all the time. And as an introvert, you can go grab a cubby and be alone. And because the idea of an introvert is, where are you charged? And you're charged by being in alone spaces. I get really charged pretty equally now. And what's interesting is I used to be fairly introverted, and now I'm more introverted because I've practiced that. So it really does come down to just keep practicing. Okay.
Thank you.
So one last question.
Hi, my name is Jane. Hello, guys.
Hi, Jane.
I have a question. So my question is regarding the offer negotiation. So let's say I have only one offer in my hands, and you said that I need to ask for some time to think.
Yes.
So what if they would say no at the at the end, and I'll just end up with kind of, in an awkward situation that I would need to accept their first offer, even though I just took some time to think.
Yeah, so I have never had an experience where they wouldn't give me 24 hours. 24 hours, your offer will typically come with an expiration date of 48 hours to 72 hours. It's very common. So it's actually pretty rare that they won't give you that time to think about it. And I would actually consider that, unless they have some deadline that is reasonable as an explanation, that would be a red flag to me. And at that point, you're going to have to weigh your options. Do I need this role? I've always told the people that I've mentored in the past, if you're like in a COVID situation and you need a job right now, take the job and continue interviewing. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because you need to take care of yourself first, but look for the red flags. That would be a real red flag to me. So we are a little bit over our time. I want to say thank you to everyone. I want to keep this channel open for questions for a minute. If you need to drop off, please feel free to do so. I'm going to keep the channel open for about 5 more minutes for questions. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I had a quick question in regards to like case studies and portfolio.
Hi, Grace. Yes.
Hi. Yeah, so I don't have like my own portfolio yet, but I'm in the process of creating one. Okay. So I'm kind of curious because you're saying that the portfolio is kind of where we like display our UI skills, and the case study is where we really talk about the design process.
Yes.
So when you say that, is it kind of look like on the portfolio has like maybe a view full case study link, or what does that kind of look like? Because I think I'm just a little confused on the difference between the two.
Yeah, so here's what I recommend. There are a lot of, there's hundreds and hundreds of really good examples of case studies and portfolios. Typically, as a portfolio, you're looking for your visual design. That's at least just my tendencies. I'm not saying that's right. The case study is going to show me your thinking process of what you carried through to get to the end result, because the end result is what will typically be in your portfolio. The process will be in your case study. So I'll start with a portfolio and then I will move to the case study to see. But what I have seen over the last, I would say 3 to 4 years, is almost a first reliance on the case study over the portfolio, because in your portfolio, a portfolio comes out of the visual design world from marketing. And so what you're typically dealing with an end product of collateral or a website or something like that. UX is interested in that UX, but it's the end step. So you get it as well in your case study. You're showing them all the screens or the different variations, things like that, but you're also showing them the process. So I would worry less about a portfolio and more about the case study. That's probably where I would suggest putting most of your emphasis in the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else to take time for one more question?
Hey, I have a question. This is
yes.
about you said we should connect to recruiters.
Yes.
Should it be recruiters within our city or country, or should we just ask different recruiters from different places?
Well, obviously if you're willing to relocate, you can connect anywhere, but you're typically going to want to connect to companies that are in your local region because they're going to have the jobs that are right next to you. I mean, you're always welcome to connect to everybody because people connect to, in LinkedIn, you can't connect to someone who's a 3rd degree. You can only connect to someone who's first or as a 2nd degree. So you have to know someone. So there is value in knowing people in Boston and New York and Chicago and LA and areas that you don't live. But ultimately you want to find a job where you want to live. So that's where I would suggest looking. So say, like I live in Silicon Valley, but say I wanted to be in Portland, I want to go connect to all the recruiters in Portland. And let me tell you this, recruiters want to connect with you. They do. That's their job. They want as many people to connect with as possible. That's how they make their money, is by knowing you. They will take calls. They will review your portfolio. They will spend the time to get to know you. Okay, because that's their job. All right, everyone, I want to thank you all for an absolutely fantastic afternoon. Love doing this. I hope it was helpful for you guys. Feel free to share your thoughts in the Slack board, and I will see you next week.